Oh,
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Carrie and Danny. And Carrie, I've really been enjoying reading what just the average person has to say about that article about relief.
mm-hmm.
So have you got some more comments? Because I would love to hear.
Yep.
I just love hearing what everyone else has got to say. And with that in mind, we'd love to hear what you've got to say. Anyone that wants to find the original article and comment there too, it's on a group called Barely Adventist. But
Yep.
we'd love to hear as well what your thoughts have been,
Yep.
um,
And if you
and
guys
what's
are
been like
lost
for
as
you.
to what we're talking about, watch part one. So,
Absolutely.
all right, let me hit screen share here.
Yep, let's jump right into it.
Someday we will get fast at this and it will be more professional, but you know what? It is what it is.
No, we're not here to be professional.
No,
We're
we're
here to
not.
just be us.
We're just average folks.
Mm.
So Jeffrey says this is an excellent article, well written and very important. My burden is being a leader in this community who sees these bad dynamics playing out and having limited power, resources, or support to effect sufficient change. Maybe my burden exists because I'm somehow accepting too much responsibility for the spiritual growth and culture in the church. So few Adventists can articulate a theology of salvation that accounts for Paul's statements in 2 Corinthians 3, verses 6 to 11, where Paul describes the law written on stone being a ministry of death and condemnation. I want to see the majority of the church growing as open hearted, gracious, emotionally and spiritually healthy Christians, but the constant pushback against the gospel within the church is disappointing and frustrating. I can sense from your writing that you share that disappointment and frustration.
Oh,
It
I
is,
would have loved some leaders that sounded like Jeffrey when I was going to church.
yeah, and I think that so many people are missing the simplicity of salvation because it's become so murky in Adventism. Like, when I would try to explain my beliefs to people when I was an Adventist, they're like, oh yeah, we're saved by grace through faith, but we got to do all this other stuff. But we go to church on Saturday. We don't eat pork. We don't eat saltfish. We don't drink. We don't dance. We don't do this. We don't do that. Instead of what we get to do. And the salvation is, yeah, something that people can't quite articulate simply. It makes it tough when there's all those extra rules. Here's another one. Um, Let me hit share. You see it now? Yep.
Yes, it's
Okay.
here.
Judy says, I don't know what church you've been associated with because I have never had any of these feelings since becoming an SDA nearly 30 years ago. Good for her. I think the problem most people have is not finding their place within the church and not placing their trust on Jesus and relying on flawed human beings to help them grow their relationship with Jesus. No church will save you. Well, and I think so many people have, and you've, of course, Peter Dixon says as well, that's not my Adventism, and that's true. I
Mm.
think that whenever we disbelieve somebody's story by saying well, that's not what I've experienced. So then you're basically saying it didn't happen because I never saw it happen. It didn't happen to me, so I don't believe you. So we need to take what people are saying and believe them and say,
Yes.
yes, this happens. So Natalie responds, no, but I think the church could either lead you to God and teach you how to have that relationship, or can push you away from everything to do with God by representing Him poorly. It may not be the church that saves you, but its purpose is to teach people how to get close to God and have that relationship with Him. We can't assume that just because someone is sitting in the pews that they have a relationship with God or even know how to have a relationship with God. Too many people in the church are pushing people away from learning about God through their attitudes, many seen in the
Mm.
comments on this page. The constant holier than thou nitpicking about things that aren't salvation issues like jewelry, Sabbath do's and don'ts, the need to be right, what seems to be more important than caring about others, the outright lack of empathy and action to help others who are struggling, either financially, spiritually, mentally, etc., the lack of any Christ like caring for people who are leaving the church. what happened to Christ leaving the 99 to bring one back? Adventist churches don't care if you leave. Where is Christ in that? And I think I think the general atmosphere, they talk about backsliders, or whatever, but it's like once your name is gone, they okay, fine, you're gone.
Um, yeah. I was thinking about what Judy's comment, the first one you read here on this page, where it
Mm-hmm.
says that she never had any of these feelings. Um, and the crazy thing is that I understand that because neither did I.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I did and I didn't. I mean, it would be so easy for me to say I never had any of those feelings. Because, well, I mean, as long as I believed everything the church was telling me that I needed to do, be, and become in order to stand perfect and sinless and, to naturally not sin by the end of time, because God and I was so close and the Holy Spirit was living in me so much that I was naturally not sinning and I was living this near perfect life right before the end of time so that when Jesus came back, I go to heaven. As long as I had this like end goal and that was all I was focused on, I didn't have a lot of those other feelings.
Mm-hmm.
All I had was a true and genuine sense that I was sinful and I was terrible and everything was all my fault. And I
Mm-hmm.
was never probably going to ever get to heaven. Um, and I mean, for years and years and years, I never had any of those feelings. I never, because, I was just, the focus is different. But when the focus becomes a relationship with Jesus, when it's just relationship and you forget about all the other, was it a couple of comments in the last show? Somebody said something about uh, relief is often comes about because things become burdensome. Like we burden people down with the weight of all this stuff before they realize the joy of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there comes a point where you get stuck in that and you don't have. I mean, maybe this person here that was talking, Judy, it's different for her, but for me, for a long time, I think partly I didn't have any feelings for a long time because I was a little bit numb, or
Mm-hmm.
because I was too exhausted to have any feelings because everything
Right.
was just so hard.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, for anyone listening that genuinely says, I've never felt any of those things, but they still have a real understanding of the big picture stuff, not just inside the church stuff, then I'm a little bit envious. I can
Yeah.
only imagine how wonderful it would be to grow up like that.
Mm-hmm.
But for anyone else listening that maybe says I haven't had those feelings, but maybe it's because you've never looked at anything different, so there's been no space for those feelings to appear. I
Mm-hmm.
just want to make room for people to have more space to consider stuff outside of what they've been told is the only way.
Right.
As long as I kept believing, narrow is the way, and the Adventist church has got me in the middle of that narrow way, and wide is the way to hell, the Bible verse on that. As long as that's what I was focusing on, I didn't have a lot of those other feelings.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't space or energy for them.
Yeah. Another comment here, Garrick says, believers leave church for only one reason. They become convicted that it is not of God.
Oh, I should have just read that. That's so much shorter than everything I tried to say.
Well, and when you said narrow is, talking about the narrow way, and then part of, last several years, I've just like, if God wants, I believe he wants as many people to be there as possible. He's not going to make it super hard, you know? I not that we shouldn't put effort, not that, but it's not that it should be all roses and easy and all that stuff, but we I don't think all of these little things that I grew up believing that were so important to not do, I don't think he really cares about all that stuff. I think he cares
Um,
more about how we treat people and all of that. So,
on one of my trips to the States, way, way, way back, I was actually in Yosemite, and
mm,
A current Adventist church pastor was sitting up one night talking around the campfire at kids' camp, and a current Adventist pastor at the time he was, isn't now, I won't name him, but he said to me when we were talking about this, and I was in my late 20s, and he said, I believe it true. He said, I believe a true seeker is never lost. So these are questions and things I've been asking for many years. And when he said, I believe, he believed that a true seeker was never lost, I can remember thinking, I really want to believe that. But you can't prove that. You know, in the back of my head, that the whole thoughts that are trained into me. I really want to believe that, but you can't prove it. And a whole pile of other stuff. And I started thinking, oh, I think you're a bit of a heretic. I really appreciate that you believe that, but obviously your relationship with God's a little bit suspect because that's not truth.
Mhm.
Um, because it's not about being a true believer's never lost you. I mean, you can be a true believer but still sin, so you're not going to get to heaven. And it
Right.
wasn't until earlier this year I was reading a book written back in the was it written back in the 1950s? There was that famous preacher, Tozer. Is it A.J. Tozer or A whatever it is?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, I think.
Not an Adventist writer, so never encouraged to read him. But I was reading his book, and because of the time frame it was written in, he uses quite wordy language. But the shortest version of what he says is that he says is, oh man, I wish I had it here. He basically says the Bible tells us clearly that nobody can come to God unless you're called. Okay, even in the New Testament it says that. It says, that you don't even have a desire to come to God unless you're called.
Mhm.
And so the minute that you start thinking anything about salvation or anything about God or any of that stuff, it means that God's already drawing you. And so from that point, he says, God is already holding you in the palm of his hand. And I
Mm.
suddenly realized that it made all that other stuff so irrelevant.
Yeah. Here is another one. This one's kind of a longer one. Let me get that up. Says, this Rachel says, this is indeed a true and relevant musing. The Adventist church on the whole has been severely crippled and misguided by a powerful spirit of religion, maybe the most dangerous demonic spirit, in my opinion. I know that many individual churches, including the one I attend, are breaking free from the strong legalistic, ritualistic foundations of the denomination, and this is good. My belief, though, is that the very nature of what Adventism was founded on makes it have long-lasting negative religious effects that still cling to many people within the denomination. Most notably, this us versus them bubble environment that makes SDAs think they somehow have an edge over those nasty Sunday keepers, when in fact many Sunday keepers have an enormously richer understanding of Scripture and a more complete walk with God than most Adventists. This
Yeah.
denomination is missing so much. In my opinion, the only solution is to shed our primary identification as Adventists, and all the denominational nonsense that goes with that, and instead let our first and foremost identity be as Christ followers alone. And as such, we are open to always learning more, being willing to acknowledge that there is always more truth and light to be found in God's word, and we don't have it all figured out. God is not perfectly contained within the Adventist box, and that relief that people free from feel in breaking free from Adventism is discovering that there's so much more to God than they have ever been taught before.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yep.
I can remember when when I did a talk on the SDA Q&A and talked about why I left the church, and it was the same day I wrote a letter off and said I don't want to be a member anymore. One of my oldest friends had come across that, and they kept saying to me, "Oh, my heart's just breaking for you," and I'm like, "You shouldn't be sad for me." And I couldn't get through to them that I wasn't leaving the church because I was leaving God. I was leaving the church because, like she said, there's so much more. My picture of God got so big, it didn't fit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it took my non-Adventist friends, we'd been meeting together for 3 or 4 hours once a week for 5 years. And I was just like Rachel says. I thought I had a bit of an edge over them, and I thought I knew more. And And as this time last year, I remember saying to one of my friends, "Oh, but I know you have an amazing relationship with God, but if you really are this close to God and He talks to you this clearly, why don't you keep the Sabbath?" And I was so certain that in answering my question, she'd become an Adventist. I never ever knew that that was going to be what tipped me out. And she said, "I don't need to keep the Sabbath." I said, "But the Ten Commandments." And she said, "I'm not an Israelite." She said that was a law specifically for blah, blah, blah. And she explained it to me. And I said to her, "But when you become a Christian, you become a spiritual Israelite. So they apply to you." And she said, "Prove it to me from the Bible. Prove it to me and I'll change." And you know what? I couldn't prove it. I'd based my whole life on this and I could not prove it. And it was just, and it went suddenly from me thinking I was building relationships to help them eventually come to know God to realizing that I knew nothing about God compared to them. And
Yeah.
one day, Carrie, I hope you get to meet some of my friends. These people, they're incredible. I mean, the stories of my one friend, Ruthie, I keep saying to her that because she's always wrestling with God and arguing with him about something. And I've said to her for 5 years now, wrestling is really intimate. If you're wrestling with God like Joseph, close enough to break your hip, then you are physically closer to him than anyone else I know. And I've seen the truth of that played out in her life so many times.
Mm.
Um, I'm actually, when we're finished and we get around to posting this, I'm going to link that somewhere that Rachel can find it. And if she wanted to come onto the show and ever actually talk about more about what she wrote, I would love to hear someone else's experience on that, because even though we talked about when we started this channel, Carrie, that it was so other people could maybe hear a story and think, "Oh, me too," and not feel alone. I still like to hear other people's stories like Rachel's and have that, yeah, me too, not alone moment too. So I'm thinking I might send her a comment and see if she wants to come talk some more about what she wrote. That was
Oh,
such a
sure.
complete package in a little nutshell.
So here's one hmm, talks about the good old shaking. The sediments displayed here in the comments speak of a falling away, possibly the falling away by nominal Adventists. The shaking will produce this effect. This sadden me deeply, and what's more, will get worse, much worse. Since coming into this church from a Sunday church, now that grates me when you just say Sunday church. Oh, so
Yes,
basically everybody. Okay. Anyway, I
us and
digress.
them.
Another thing. We'll move on. 30 years ago, I have never been more convicted of truth, of the pillars of our faith, even when I myself faltered along the way, also experienced harsh criticism and misguided judgment from certain people in certain churches. The truth kept drawing me back like a magnet. I can't speak for others, but once you know, you know. It's okay. I've been shaken out. I'm pretty sure that's how people speak about us. It's fine.
I'm sorry, I've got a comment on that. It's just bursting out of me, Carrie. It's
Go
bursting
ahead.
out of me.
Burst.
Seriously, that comment so annoys me.
Mm-hmm.
It really annoys me. And it annoys me because you know how they say nobody hates cigarette smoke worse than an ex-smoker? So I know when I read that, it annoys me because I believed exactly what he said.
Yeah.
That was me. So I know it makes me angry because it hits that core deep within
Mm-hmm.
that shows me who I was. Um, so I find it hard for that reason. That was me. But it also, yeah, so that's what makes me angry. It makes me sad because it was me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't find the words of what I really want to say. I feel like they're stuck in me. What I really want to say is that, oh, I can't find them. They'll have to come to me. It's just you can't see what you can't see.
Well, and I think
Oh,
that the whole concept of the shaking was like a self-fulfilling prophecy that, somehow, basically then it's protecting the institution by saying, see, this was talked about, that it's the shaking. So when people start to leave, instead of self-reflection of the institution and saying, maybe we've got some stuff wrong, it's already been predicted, already been insulated against that, so where they don't have to admit that maybe they had a part of people being shaken out. Maybe people left because like we ultimately, well, we quit attending due to church politics, but ultimately we dropped our membership due to doctrine, period. It was, and so people may say, oh, forgive the church and come back. Well, we've forgiven the church, but we're not coming back because it's a doctrinal problem, so they've already, it's self-fulfilling, but they you know what I mean. People out there know what I mean.
I
It's like they
I read that comment that Gavin wrote, and I can't believe that I ever got out because I believed what he said so strongly that I
Mhm.
can't believe any other thought. I can't believe that any question of truth ever actually cracked its way in and made its way into my. I, I read that and I can't believe that I ever made it out because
and
I believed that and it held me in there.
oh, for sure.
I didn't. I didn't. I got to the point where I didn't expect to be happy. I
Hmm.
didn't expect to be happy this side of heaven. I
Hmm.
didn't expect to be happy on earth. I had no expectations of heaven on earth or any joy of God living within me because I just knew that, sometimes life sucks and you've got to fight the good fight and hang out. And one day when I get to that little place in the sky, I'll eventually be happy. And it's perfectly feasible to be miserable now when I get forever. Um,
Because being miserable now is to be expected. It's
well, it was trained into me.
yeah,
And so I read Gavin's comments and I can't believe I'm out because I believed that.
yeah. Well, Natalie responds, she said, so what's been done about it? So much money is put into evangelism, same old evangelism that they've done forever. I don't see any of it helping people within the church who are struggling or those who have left. Why are we not providing any kind of spiritual mentors to help people through their struggles? Feels like once they've got you as a member and they've got you on the books, all support of any kind disappears. She's not wrong.
I went to the church. I must admit, I did go to the church quite a few times and say, look, I'm qualified now as a counselor. I'm happy to run meetings. Do you want me to run some courses? Do you want me to talk to people about this? Do you want to give me an office in the building? Um, and there was nothing, nothing ever. And then I walked down to, um, I can remember walking into our local, what's called whānau, so the Maori word for family, whānau Resource Centre, and saying, I'd like to do some free counselling. I'd like to do some volunteer work for you. This is my experience. And that was it. I had 2 full days a week, chocker with people
Mm-hmm.
that didn't get help from anywhere else because they didn't have any money and they fell through the cracks.
Yeah,
It was just the weirdest feeling.
yeah. Well, and I think in Adventism is so used to functioning in a certain way that once you try to challenge them to think outside of the box or think out to do something a different way, they just don't know what to do about that. I know that we faced that in one of my husband's earlier districts that he was pastoring. We had a building that was empty 6 days out of the week, and young families that needed daycare had a woman who attended the church who said, yeah, I'll run it. I don't, we'll get trained. We've got the facilities. It's all great. Church members didn't want anything to do with it because I don't know why. They just didn't want to do anything differently. So
Oh,
it's
what a waste.
unwilling to think outside of the box. We have another comment. I have to see how many I have here, but this one,
That's
Lynn
okay.
says, my relationship with Jesus has grown and strengthened since leaving the abusive culture of this SDA church. I
Yep.
would second that.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, and this Chad said, what is what is their relief from? I grew up in an Adventist home, became one myself. I find relief in what we believe. If you are oppressed in an Adventist church, try another Adventist church. Danny, how many do you have close to you? Um,
Well, actually, not a lot. But to be fair, I attended. Seriously, I must have in my lifetime, if you count all the ones I attended, even if it was for like 3 or 4 months or 6 months trips to the States and stuff, in my lifetime, I must have attended at least, well, over 50 different Adventist churches.
yeah,
So,
and
I mean, how many do I have to try?
keep trying. Says, I've never felt pressure to do anything other than follow the Lord with all my heart, soul, and mind. It is Is it possible the pressure from the devils trying to keep people to leave right before Earth's final moments? And Ellen, I don't know what her last name is, I scribbled it out, said, I agree. It is the devil's work to make people unhappy in the church. Maybe, anyway. Hi, friend. Relief happens when someone leaves a toxic SDA environment. Unfortunately, those exist. The Berrien Springs and or Collegedale bubble is hard to find elsewhere. Berrien Springs is where Andrews University is. Collegedale is where Southern
Ah,
Adventist University is at. So it's
okay.
two large Adventist ghettos. Um, no one said anything about a couple of bad experiences. Having lived in 3 states in the past 15 years in 3 different parts of the country, I disagree. It is hard to find elsewhere. It is. When I grew up in the Berrien Springs bubble, so there are many churches, and you can, within 10-mile radius, you can find one that you'd probably be happier with, or you can just church hop every Sabbath and not have to get involved. That works too. Yeah, I get that, but the author seems to be advocating leaving the church altogether because of one or maybe a couple bad experiences. He didn't read the same article I did.
No, the article I read said, why is it people aren't saying, I'm devastated to leave the church? I'm sad everyone upset me. They're just going, wow, here I am and I feel relieved.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel relieved when something was wonderful. If something was wonderful and you lose it, you cry.
Here's another one that you'll love here, Danny. They leave for self-worship, no patience in how God will deal with his church. They believe they know more than God and how to deal with wrongdoing. They forget wheat and tares are growing together, and they forget our end of probation is the NSL. What's NSL? I don't know. And they have no faith. Let's be very clear that leaving Adventism does not equal leaving faith nor service to God. Everybody breaks commandments. No one is perfect. You said yourself, if you break one commandment, you break all of them. I have things to do. Have a Merry Christmas. It's okay that we disagree, but it's not okay for you to talk down to me or be condescending. And
Go,
he
Nelly.
later he says harlot daughters of Rome, because that's all the Protestant churches. I can just feel the love of Jesus dripping off the words that you speak. Um, I don't think we need to give him any more airtime. Natalie says, I haven't made any claims about myself other than I think that God is wherever people are looking for them. I agree. I never said God is with me. I never said God speaks to me. If people had to leave everything figured out before God would come to them, churches would be empty. I thought a church was supposed to be some kind of hospital where people come to heal and learn. People in Adventist churches aren't perfect either. They're breaking the 10 Commandments on a daily basis, just like everyone else. They're not perfect. Some of them are just holier than thou, condescending attitudes where they think they have everything figured out and they act like they're perfect and look down on others who aren't the Bible scholars they are. I'm sorry, I'm not praying with with little bells on my gowns. I'm sorry, I don't have it figured all out, but I'm lucky enough to have made a friend through this Facebook group, has been doing Bible study with me, and he has been basically a spiritual mentor for me, which is the first time in my 54 years of being alive that an Adventist actually tried to help me rather than talking down to me or talking to me like you.
Oh,
Um, so it kind of kept going back and forth and back and forth. People want to read that, they can find the post. Um, he says here, apostate Protestantism today has about 40 false doctrines they teach. It's interesting that he thinks that all of Protestantism teaches the same doctrine. I'm glad to see he knows all 40. There's only 40 false doctrines. How many? Yeah, anyway. There's only one end time church, and that's the SDA church. And he cites Revelation. Do you think God is supporting the thousands of other false teaching churches? And ask if he thinks he's exclusive. He says, no, when you leave the SDA church, you leave God also. You are worshiping yourself. You either come back or be lost, period.
whoa.
Yeah.
Um, I've got no, yeah. Have you ever met somebody and they've been talked about their friend and they're like, oh, you've got to, you get this in the horse, because I'm into horses, I get it all the time. You've got to meet my friend. They've got horses that look like this, and they do this, 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 and this, and this, and this, and blah, 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 blah. You're gonna love my friend. You need to meet them. And I start thinking, no, 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 I really don't want to meet them. No, I don't think we'd like each other. That's no, no, I don't do that with my horses. And you just know, right? And
Right.
so that's what I get. You read this stuff from Dick here, and I'm thinking, no, 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 I don't want to meet your version of God. He sounds horrible.
Yeah, I mean it's if you leave the SDA church, you leave God and you are worshiping self and you either come back or be lost, period.
Again, even if that is true, how are you supposed to love somebody that didn't give you the one true church that would save you until 1844? He kept it hidden for all those thousands and thousands of years. Where's the love? Where's the love? Plus, Carrie, we're running out of time, so I'll be as short as possible. Because another whole topic, and this is a rabbit hole I don't want to go down, but someone said to me recently, do you really think that Jesus or God arranged for the Bible to be written, tidied up these little books, and just like packaged it exactly as it is now and handed it over and said, here's a list of rules of how you live? You think it had just arrived now in this century in a little tidy packaged format? And God said, don't change it, don't take anything out of it, blah, 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 and that's it. And I thought, actually, yeah, I spent my whole life believing that. That's why I was so 100% about everything. And exactly like those other people that are so sure. Um,
I
and it
have
wasn't until I started reading How Did the Bible Get Canonized that I realized that it didn't come like that. There were humans, flawed humans,
mm,
that decided which books would go in and which books would go out. I was always told, oh, the Catholic Church, and not that I'm ever, the Catholic Church added to the Bible, so don't ever get a Catholic Bible. There's a couple of extra verses here or there. Well, there's not a couple of extra verses. There's a couple of whole extra books. And then when I started looking,
interestingly, the book that the Bible that Ellen held up had the Apocrypha in it.
well, I haven't even read at the Apocrypha. Getting to those ones, I haven't even read all
Oh, I
those
haven't
things.
either. I mean, to me, it's I don't know. We have enough comments. We could do a part three, Danny. Do you want to do a part three? There's some
I
good
don't
ones
know.
coming up. I just scrolled through and there's a couple that I think might spark some conversation.
Why not?
Why not? Okay, let's end
And
this
we'll keep,
one.
and for anyone that's listening, the reason we're doing it part three and rather than continuing now is that we really appreciate that a lot of you are busy and that you have busy lives and things to do. And we're really trying to keep things to 40 minutes or under so that it doesn't become a burden to watch a whole show. Again, please drop your comments below if you see something on Facebook and you think, wow, what do other people think about this? If you read something and you think, I don't feel comfortable about this and I don't know why, let us know and maybe we can discuss it. You can come on and discuss it with us, or we can just discuss it and you can listen. But
Yep,
please let us know. Let us know what's really going on in your life.
absolutely. Like and subscribe. We will see you for part three.